I'm milling about with MJ Bassett. She is the co-writer and director of the really fun adventure film Rogue.
Hi, how you doing, Ron?
Hi, MJ. So I was doing a little homework about you, and you have a really cool background. You actually started off as wanting to be a wildlife veterinarian. So this movie makes perfect sense for you.
Oh, totally. So this is a movie that's a weird kind of culmination of things I've wanted to do in my life for many decades, because I'm old now, so everything's in decades. So when I was young, I was a teenager in the UK. I was a veterinary assistant because I wanted to be a vet. I passionately wanted to be a vet. And so I worked in zoos working with a wildlife vet. I ran a wildlife hospital. I worked on farms. I did all kinds of things. And then my career just well, first of all, I wasn't clever enough to go to veterinary college. I kind of flunked out on the academic side. And I thought, okay, I'll do a zoology degree and work in Africa on rhino conservation. And that's what I always wanted to do. And I ended up on TV in the UK hosting wildlife documentaries and wildlife programs. And here's a badger, here's a giraffe, that kind of stuff, talking about those things. And then from that, I bought a video camera. This was in the kind of late 80s when video cameras were still, the size of a table, and started making short films. And everybody says, oh, you're making short films about animals. I said, no, I want to blow stuff up, because that's the other thing that I love to do, because I love action movies. So I ended up just kind of going in this weird, I went into filmmaking, horror, action, fantasy, sci-fi. And it's taken all this time to get a project together, which brings my passion for conservation into a kind of action genre space. So there's a very long way of answering that question, but that's kind of how it all came about.
Yeah, so you don't have any regrets about not going into that field, because you're essentially, doing it now.
Well, if you could wave a magic wand and say, apart from other things in my life that I'd like to have waved a magic wand on years ago, it's vet or a film director, I'd be a wildlife vet. I mean, that's kind of what I would love to do, but it's not, I can't complain about my life. I have a very good life, but that's still a thing for me, which has sort of some meaning. And that's the reason why Rogue exists. And hopefully the next movie I make will do the same. And the one after. I've come to a place in my life now where I do try and find stuff which has a sort of an underlying meaning for me. If I'm creating it, if I'm working for other people, that's different. But if I'm doing my stuff, it has to have some resonance.
And also, you mentioned you were on television as a presenter, but you were doing it for children's television. So what's the difference when you have to entertain kids in that way?
When you do it's lots of like, this is brilliant, lots of brilliant, and this is amazing. It's like much more kind of and effervescent and enthusiastic. And I was only like 16, 17 years old and I was doing that. So I was kind of felt that way anyway. But yeah, I did a lot of, mostly it was children's. I did some adult stuff as well, but not so much. And by the time I'd moved out of it, I was making, I tried to make movies, and that was a 10-year project as well. It was making the first short films that weren't very good, because I worked for a wildlife filmmaker. So I learned photography and wildlife documentary making. So that's kind of where I got interested in the photography and the filming aspect. And then that became, genre filmmaking on a bigger scale. But yeah. I mean, one always keeps one's enthusiasm for it, so you do what you can.
Yeah. Now, the animals in Rogue, some of them, of course, are CGI, like the lions. But what about the elephants? Were they real?
They're real. Elephants are real. So yeah, so in terms of, I mean, I don't like to bring animals onto a film set. It's quite a stressful place for them. And a trained wild animal still undergoes a lot more stress than, say, a dog or some more domestic creature. The very, very opening shots of Rogue do have real lions, and they actually lived on that range that we were shooting in. So they just came, 50 yards from their actual enclosures anyway, and they were tame as lions ever are. But then I did decide that we use CG and puppets for the rest of the lions, and they're not real, but I'd rather do that than actually stress an animal. The elephants, again, lived on that range, and I asked the handlers, the people who look after them, I said, can they do a walkthrough for me? And they said, yeah, sure. And I had this idea. I wanted a scene in the movie, which was, it sort of doesn't need to exist dramatically, but it's this kind of grace moment where we all sort of step into another world. And hopefully when you watch the movie, you just kind of experience this moment of awe and majesty. And they're real elephants. I mean, in reality, they're just walking past the camera, heading for a bucket of peanuts, right? But when you shoot them in slow motion with epic music, suddenly it becomes something else entirely. And I think it's actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie, even though it has no dramatic purpose. It's just, my heart fills whenever I see those elephants walk by.
Yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. How did the actors feel being around the lions and being around the cubs? I mean, did Megan want to take one home?
Well, no, the thing about it is that the lion cubs, again, because the movie is about this lion farming issue, or the underlying theme is this, I had to be super careful where we even got the lion cubs from, make sure that they were from a credible, a moral source. So the cubs at the beginning, I mean, we shot the movie over like 3 or 4 weeks. It's a very quick shoot, but even then the cubs have grown quite a lot. They actually smell terrible. They don't like being handled very much. My daughter plays one of the kidnapped girls in the movie, and she co-wrote the script with me, right? She got a big scratch down her neck from this lion cub that didn't really want to be picked up. So though everybody came, it's like when the elephants were on set, everybody came down for the elephant scene without being in the movie. It's like, okay, there's some majesty. And the same with the lions. As much as they weren't on the set, because they were nearby, and the place I was living was actually on that range. So my place, my apartment was right opposite the lion enclosure. I would hear them roaring every night. And we'd go and sit and just watch these incredible creatures, because they do have a charisma and a power. And they do speak to, I think, kind of real atavistic feeling within humans, because they were one of our predators once, and still could be.
Everybody feels like they are so cuddly and cute, and you're going to take one home.
No.
No.
I mean, you can, and there's a whole issue, excuse me, with people do, as with this Tiger King thing right now.
You read my mind, yeah.
This awful situation where people are getting these cubs, habituating them to humanity, and then they get big and they get dangerous, they hit maturity, particularly the males, and they get filled with testosterone and they get aggressive. Now, of course, some lions and tigers do stay, calm, but others will want to kill you. Bears, any of these big predators, you can't help. And if you accidentally turn on that behavior, one of the things with the lion handlers, I said, could you get them to chase or attack you maybe, so I can get a live action? And they went, no, we never encourage that, because you're triggering a behavior that you might not be able to turn off. So it became a very real problem. And there were tigers they had 2 tigers as well on the range. Excuse me a second. They had 2 tigers on the range near me, and they went, tigers, you got to watch them. They always want to kill you, right? Because they're predators. And it's extraordinary being around them. We are so compelled. I mean, I'm a wildlife nut, right? So there were hyenas nearby, and cheetah, and there was a young leopard they were hand rearing, because it had been brought in, and you want to be around them, but it's not right. And so I have a huge issue with the way big cats are kept in America, because of the lack of legal cover for them. In the UK, we've moved off that a little bit. But there shouldn't be more tigers in captivity in Texas than there are in the entirety of the wild. There's something wrong with that.
Yeah. Are you, and I want to move on to the movie, but are you personally crusading for the lions to be treated properly?
Well, this is why this movie exists.
Yeah.
I made this movie to have these kinds of conversations. Now I don't live in Africa. I can't directly affect anything, but what I can do is I can make a film which hopefully everybody will enjoy, and Megan Fox is in, and it's slam bang action adventure. I mean, it's a fun movie. I hope you agree. But at the end of it, I put a little bit at the end of the movie, at the beginning of the credits, where it says there are 12,000 lions in captivity in Southern Africa right now, being used for their body parts and for canned hunting. And I don't think it's right. I don't think you can decimate tigers in the wild, then decimate lions in the wild, then breed tigers in captivity, then breed lions in captivity, just to satisfy a market, which for traditional medicine and also for game hunting. Whether you like big game hunting or not, and I have very ambivalent feelings about it, you shouldn't be breeding something in captivity, walking it out into the field, and then shooting it dead on the spot. There's nothing moral about that. So that's the conversation I want to have. That's my crusading. I can use my platform, which is this.
Absolutely. So now, talking about Megan Fox, I love how you sort of courted her to be in this film. I think,
Mhm.
quote, you said she will not wear short shorts.
That's true. It's true. Well, because I never expected when myself and my daughter wrote the script, it was always going to be very low budget because I wanted to get full creative control. My producing partner on it was great. She allowed me to say, just run with it. There's not much money, spend it wisely. But when we finished writing the script, it turned out pretty good. And so people started saying, well, maybe you can get a name for the lead. And I'm like, well, which name me an actress who is kind of badass and tough. And there's lists come in and you go, oh, I'm not sure. I don't think we can afford this one or that one. And then Megan's name was on the list. I'm like, well, she's not going to want to do this. And I said, well, you don't never say never, right? Let's talk to her. Let's talk to her agent and her people and get her the script. And she read the script and she really liked it. And I was a bit stuck. I was like, wow, I never expected. And also my perception of Megan was, I guess, everybody else's perception of her. I didn't know her. I'm not involved in Hollywood in that way. But I went to meet her and she was a lovely, thoughtful, quiet woman. She's a mother of 3 kids. You know, she cares about the world. She's very open to ideas. But I said, I make tough movies. You know, there's a lot of bruises and cuts and scrapes happening. I'm unapologetically do that. I want the movie to feel like that. And she was like, no, that's what I want to do. I want to try and move the sort of perception of me from this sexy, kitteny thing to a real woman with some power and some agency. I was like, well, I can help you there. I mean, we can teach you how to wield a weapon. We can teach you how to move. You're not going to be in short shorts. You're going to be in combat gear. You're going to be in full battle rattle, as we say, you know? Mm. And she said, yeah, bring it on. So we did. And she was a bit surprised for a while, I think.
Did you deliver your promise of the cooking bruises?
Surely did. I surely delivered. But the other thing is, like, I think we just treated her like a human being. You know, it's like a lot of the cast and crew I knew because I worked in South Africa a lot. So like Philip Winchester, who plays the male lead, plays Joey Kaczynski in the movie.
He's great, by the way.
Yeah. He's fabulous, right? And he's a very good friend of mine. We've worked together for years. I did a show called Strike Back, which is just all wall-to-wall action. And Phil is one of the most militarily competent actors I've ever worked with. He works with veterans and does lots of sort of charity work for them as well. A couple of the South African boys were ex-military as well. My daughter's tough as boots, you know. Jess Sutton, who plays the other kidnapped girl, I know she's tough as boots because I've worked with her before. So it was very much a gathering of the family again. And so Megan stepped into a world where I hope she felt supported and safe. And honestly, we're just having a good time.
Do you, as the director, do you get into the trenches with them and go through the military training where you step out of that?
I do. No, that's the reason I get involved in the movies. I just want to pretend like everybody else. I think the cast will tell you, and I'm the first person to get behind the wheel of a vehicle and say, let's drive like this, or grab a weapon and say, let's move like this, or jump into an African river, or whatever it takes, I'll do it. And, you know, we're going to stand near an explosion, I'll be standing near the explosion. I would never ask an actor to do something that I wouldn't do, right? I think you have to lead from the front. Now, I'm lucky because I've done 20 years of these kinds of movies and these projects. Like I've trained with Jordanian special forces and things like that. So I mean, like I come quite well equipped and quite well. I don't make any claims to be trained, but I know how that world works, and I can strip a weapon and load it and fire it and do all. I mean, that's okay for me. It plays hell in your nails, by the way. Though those guns are really tough. But so that's a world that I've been in. So yeah, I want to do it. I'm a closet actor, to be honest.
Terrible. So did were there any scenes where you felt that Megan might have been in a little bit more danger than you'd hoped?
No, because there's the trick with these kinds of movies is to make it look as dangerous as it can possibly be and be safe. So I've had, Phil Winchester will tell you this, I've had him have some hairs burnt on the back of his head when I said, just go a little bit closer to the explosion. I've been there, but I'm surrounded by people who will say, I will push and push and push because that's what I want. So we're in Jeeps racing through the African bush, firing weapons, hot brasses going everywhere, camera operators in the back getting bounced around. Now, that's the perception is that on screen, it's supposed to seem intense and energetic and dangerous. And the reality is I have people who tell me when to take my foot off the gas. They say, no, you can't do that. These are, and honestly, in my career, I've had one person hurt, and I say, in fact, the stunt coordinator hurt once, and I never want that to happen ever again. It's just movies, right? We're just having fun for a living. So it shouldn't be anything where you're irresponsible. I push it, I have fun, but no.
You don't go that far. Talk about the scene where they jump in. That so reminded me of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
It does. It completely does. It's supposed to.
Oh, good.
There's a whole bunch of homages in this movie to other films that I love in this genre. So, when you watch Rogue, it goes through this, goes through multiple genres. It's like an action movie, then a horror movie, and then a suspense movie, and then a character piece. And it does all of these things, I hope, anyway. And yeah, it's jumping off the cliff, Butch and Sundance, getting swept down the river. There's a scene in the movie which is a little bit like a bit from Jurassic Park, get the generator going, So it's doing all of these things in the service of the characters, obviously. But I think it's fun. I think it's funny. Phil Winchester's hilarious, so there's a little bit of everything for everybody, I think. I hope.
So whose idea was it to sing the Backstreet Boys song, Everybody? And did that sort of become like a running joke throughout the movie?
Every morning I'd play it over I like to have a PA system on the set. I play songs between setups, and we dance around and goof around and have some fun. And yeah, so when we were writing the script, I wanted a kind of earworm song to just to play that part. So a bonding thing, a kind of glue for these characters. And I think my daughter Isabel wanted "Come On Eileen" at one point. That would have been
fun too.
Right, that would have been fun too. And then I thought, yes, I didn't know how well that would travel, to be honest. I wasn't sure how well known it was outside of the UK, because in the UK it's really well known. And then that Backstreet Boys song had always been in my head. It's fun, you can dance to it, I like it. And we got really near to production, and I said, has anybody cleared the rights for this? Because even though we don't use the real song, we sing the words and we have the tune. So like 3 days before we started shooting, there was a mad panic to get to the Backstreet Boys people and say, can we do it? They read the script. I don't know if they actually read the script, but their people read the script and went, yeah, we love this. You have our blessing. Give us a little bit of money and you can do it. So we did. And it becomes this rolling theme. And I love it. I think it's so much fun.
Yeah, so much fun. That was like the comic relief too. And I think you needed that for some of those scenes, which you're like,
oh yeah, no, I mean, it is, again, hopefully when you watch it, and I've seen the damn thing so many times now, I can't even begin to anticipate how people feel about it. But there are moments where it's pretty intense, and there's violence and there's blood and there's horror. But you need, as you say, you need those moments where it's like, yeah, okay, a little bit of comedy here, a little bit of relief, a little bit of just take a breath. And I think the first 25 minutes of the movie are completely breathless. You're like, okay, just slow down. And then when you do stop, we allow ourselves to kind of enjoy it a bit as well. So that's kind of the plan. It was a deliberate effort, shall we say, to do that.
MJ, where does your attraction to this sort of violent nature come from in films, do you think?
You mean when you say violent nature, do you mean natural history nature or just violence on screen?
Yes, or
violence on screen.
Actually, I like it the other way.
I mean, to be honest, I grew up just playing those games as a little kid. I'd always wanted running around, and I'm a trans woman, so I grew up in a culture of maleness as well, and I've hung out with lots of soldiers and fighters, and that's just part of my syntax and my language, as well as being leavened by this kind of femininity I try to bring to stuff. I can still kick ass like anybody else, so I like that, and I've tried making sort of calmer, quieter, softer things, but I'm always drawn back to that, but partly because everything's heightened, it's like I like kinetic energy, and I like shooting it that way. For some directors love prep, the script and the planning, and some directors love the editing where it's a quiet, you return to the material again. I like shooting. I like being on a set. And for me, the very first movie I ever made 20 years ago was this thing called Death Watch.
Oh, I love Death Watch. I was going to bring that up.
Thank you. Well, it's a horror movie set in the trenches of World War I, for people who don't know. Andy Serkis, Jamie Bell, Matthew Rhys, really good cast. I mean, I didn't know what on earth I was doing back then, but that was still, it was using the horror genre and violence again as an exploration of what humans do to each other. So it's always trying to serve something else. So that's the excuse. It's like I don't have, I now no longer like gratuitous violence. I never really did. I'm okay with violence if it serves a purpose. And I think that's the real thing. Is like, if you have gratuitous, like there was a whole movement in the, I guess the 90s, this kind of horror porn, they called it, the ultra violence gore. I never quite saw it, what the purpose of it was. The things that we do to each other in the real world are so vile. I don't want to be reminded of that unless it's to serve something else. Now, I've definitely done it in my time. I've been gratuitous, but as I mature and as I realize the value of life and the impermanence of life, I wanted to have a little bit more meaning. That's not to say I'm going to stop doing it, but, one tries to bring in intelligence to it as well.
Well, this could be a whole new interview, but I'm really fascinated. When you came out as a trans woman, did you find people treated you differently? Did you have to bend to anything? Tell me about that. I'm just so interested in that.
Do you mean creatively or in my everyday life?
In your everyday life.
Oh, wow. It's a giant thing to do. Live a whole life and then change it for a different life, the one that you wanted to live. I'm married. I'm still married 30 years in, and I have 3 children, and they've been endlessly supportive. I couldn't have done this without them. But I mean, creatively, it's the same sort of thing. It's like people do perceive you very differently. I came out not publicly because I'm not very well known, but on the job, shall we say. I was making this series Strike Back, which I ran for many years, and I was the bearded, muscly, super alpha dude. The illusion, the persona I'd created for myself to kind of get through my life, basically, knowing that this was never really me and I didn't know how to fix it. And finally, my partner and I came to a conclusion about what had to be done, and I'm living it now. But that notion of how you step back on a set, particularly filled with soldiers and fighters and big muscly grips and gaffers and a very masculine world, and say, well, this is really me. And I was ashamed and embarrassed and all those things that come with it. And honestly, everybody was great. Now, what they were saying behind my back, I've no idea. I mean, because I probably looked a mess, still do, but like more of a mess as I was really struggling to come out and figure out who I was and how I wanted to look. And then the hormones and those things that mess with your head a little bit, just figuring out who you are. Now, the professional side, I thought my career might be done, and I'd come to accept that. I thought, okay, if I have to live a different life entirely because nobody wants to employ me, then okay, I'd rather have that than what I'm living through right now. Turns out it didn't make any real difference because I'm pretty good at what I do. I was doing a lot of television, and there's no real authorship for a director in television. It's much more a writer's medium. So I could plug myself into these new worlds. I'll do Altered Carbon or Motherland or Night Flyers or Power or whatever I was doing, and be quite anonymous. So it was helpful to go to that, and all the crews were great. And then I was being offered other scripts, and suddenly I got more romances and relationship stuff and trans stories and LGBT stories of all flavor. And the truth is, though I live that life, I don't know what to do with those stories, because I only have my experience. I can't speak to what another trans woman goes through because I never met a trans woman before I came out. I didn't have a circle of friends or any community to go to. It's just my experience of doing this. So I one day will make a story which has a kind of resonance for me personally, but I couldn't step in and say, this is the trans experience. Very early on, I was asked if I was interested in meeting to talk about doing Pose, which is an amazing show.
Oh, I love Pose, yeah.
I can't bring anything to that table. I don't know anything about that world. I just know me.
Fascinating. Bravo to you. So what's your next project?
Well, obviously, COVID has brought the world to a complete standstill. Yeah. The plan was to go back to Africa and shoot another movie in the vein of Rogue, not a military action adventure, more a family drama, still a thriller, set it's about a family that get lost in a wildlife park in Africa and have to survive, and all their family tensions come out, and it still deals, I mean, it deals with poaching and conservation and those issues as well. So that's kind of, and it's the very small budget movies. So I'm literally, as we speak, I'm waiting to find out whether I can get back into either Kenya or South Africa or somewhere to start the project again. But yeah, we've all been collapsed a little bit. I've just started writing a movie with my daughter again, which is a bigger, more sophisticated drama examination of the trade in wildlife parts across the world, because that's a big industry. It deals with basically illegal wildlife trade is always hand in hand with drug dealing, human trafficking, weapons dealing, and those kinds. So basically, if you step into that world, you step into all those worlds. So I'm trying to figure out what that narrative would be. But yeah, I mean, I keep like blowing stuff up and doing gunfights and trying to make it mean something.
Well, we look forward to much more from you. Thank you, MJ, so much for coming on the show, and stay safe.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Same here. Take good care.
Always news. Always refreshing. Always candid. Always milling about. Robin Milling delivers what celebrities are saying to you.